What's up? Welcome back to the Shuffle Squads channel. I'm PJ, of course, narrating our entire podcast episode here where we're talking not necessarily about the meta, but we're going to be talking about a forecast of things to come. So it's a very interesting episode. If you want to learn a little bit more about Pokemon TCG, especially in the competitive light, you're going to want to stick around with us for the remainder of this video. So joining me here on this, we have two other podcast guests as normal, and they are very familiar with podcasts about the Pokemon TCG. First one I'll introduce is Eric Ridgeway. Eric, how are you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Just spending my summer down here in Florida where it's hot every day and we want to go to the beach and go swimming. But it's prepping me for Hawaii, so that's all
It's
that matters.
bikini season.
Yeah, we're working on the grind, we gotta get there.
I gotcha. And a man who needs no introduction, we do have LittleDarkFury, or LDF, here joining us too. How's it going?
I'm good. I'm just chilling. Been making a lot of content recently. We're in the down dry season in between now and Worlds. There's no new stuff coming out, nothing like that. So I've been kind of trying to struggle to come up with cool content ideas, but it's made me be a little bit more creative. But yeah, I'm just chilling, just waiting for the new season to start, which I'm pretty excited to get into the Worlds 2025 grind.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on this episode. We're going to kind of go over how we're going to transition into that new season, and then more importantly, the drama surrounding the structure change for the upcoming championship circuit, and going over all of that. So again, we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I do want to give a huge shout out to all of our sponsors that help support the Shuffle Squad. We've got Advanced GG, where you can get your supplement needs like energy and focus. We do have our card sponsor, Kayfabe Cards, over in Utah, and PTCGL store for anybody getting online codes. You can also get the codes over there. And huge sponsor of the team and channel here is Ultimate Guard, where you can get all kinds of awesome sleeves and deck boxes to protect your valuable Pokemon TCG cards. Now, that being said, we're going to hop over. First thing I want to ask everybody is, are you getting prepared for Cups and Challenges? We know that July is the month that we're going to start seeing these events for the new season. Nobody really knows what's happening there, but we know that there's already planned events. So let's start off with you, Eric. Are you prepping? And if so, what decks are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, most of my prep right now is focused on anything that I might can use that experience for Worlds, because that's what's important to me right now. So, playing some more of Raging Bolt because it's going to be good into the new format. Regidrago, just kind of getting some experience because it gains a new toolbox with Kyurem. And, I just had a good top 16 finish. And then you got things like Dragapult, Gardevoir, so I'm not putting too much time into this format. I'll probably just, if I have a cup I go to in July, just net deck a list and just kind of practice with it, just to get some experience. But most of my focus in my testing right now is figuring out how to put Dusknoir in any of my decks.
Yeah, basically just add Dusknoir and water and you've got yourself a brand new deck in the Worlds format, it seems.
Yeah.
But obviously we'll be playing non-Worlds format tournaments before the middle of August, really. I know that you said Regidrago. That's been a favorite deck of mine. I know, LDF, you've been playing some Regidrago. You've always loved that card. So that is a deck that seems super consistent, and I think that a lot of people will start to adapt to it and how it's working. I think that we're going to see a big change going from the regular, best of 3 style decks, because not every local tournament is best of 3. We'll see a lot of these best of 1 tournaments come back for the challenges and the cups for next season. Bridging over to that, Matt, what do you think is the best deck for a best of 1 format right now, or the best decks?
Any deck that goes fast. So I think Raging Bolt is a pretty good answer. I think just a deck like Raging Bolt, maybe a deck like Miraidon. Turbo Roaring Moon has been getting a bit of traction recently, so that's another cool deck. Maybe even the Regidrago deck, which is kind of another one of those go fast and just kind of have an explosive turn too. So any deck like that I think is really good for the best of 1 meta, because it feels bad when you sleeve up Charizard right in a best of 1, and then your first game is like Charmander attach pass, and then you just you basically lose. So it definitely feels bad when that happens, and I think that for a best of 1 meta, I do think more faster and aggressive decks are going to be a lot stronger. But there will still be a lot of stuff to look out for, like the Gardevoir, like the Lost Box, the Lugia, decks that, even though they may be slightly weaker in best of one in some scenarios, they still can shine in this format.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that a lot of decks, going into Worlds and post-Worlds format get kind of knocked out of that area where you can go if you've had a lot of experience with the deck, you know how to play it in and out, you're comfortable playing in a 30-minute time frame. Something like Guardian, Lost Box, like you were talking about, you can play those to cups. If you're a
Right.
strong player, you've been playing it for forever, that's fine. But we're talking about Dusknoir in the next format, a lot of those decks don't seem as good into the newer format. So now is obviously the best time to be playing something like that. Now, Eric, going back to you, do you think that we're going to see a lot of time constraints come into play when we're looking at these decks? Things like Guardy, even one of my favorites, Snorlax. Not a lot of people want to play Control or things like that. So do you think we're going to see any of those pop up at League Cups or challenges?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you want to bring control to, a cup or a challenge, you're gonna run into some situations where you're gonna tie more, and it's not going to be, advantageous for you to play a deck like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're walking to a room full of Charizards, maybe that's not taken for you. Maybe you just leave it up. So just kind of use that as a meta call. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't find in best of one that time's usually that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I kind of find that you have more time because you're only playing one game,
Sure.
and you usually get 30 minutes. It's not usually a 20-minute clock. Pretty much everywhere I go is a 30-minute clock. So I think as long as just play what you're most comfortable with or want to learn, I think that's what this time is for. This is kind of like the regroup before the regional season starts again, and be prepared for that. So if there's a deck that say you're not as fast at Gardevoir, take it to a cup, you'll get faster because you'll get those real time reps. Taking Gardevoir to an online limitless tournament is very different than taking Gardevoir to, your locals where you have to shuffle after all of your actions.
Right.
So just learning how to kind of keep up your pace of play, shuffle in between, don't shuffle if you're going back in a couple of times. I highly recommend this is the type of season to challenge yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the game growing. Obviously, it's getting bigger and bigger every season that we go into the future. Now, you brought up something interesting where you were talking about playing a deck that and not necessarily focusing on what the meta is. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So, LDF, would you recommend or do you have experience, going to your locals, whether it's, if it's not a challenge or a cup, just playing in a local league night to kind of see what the meta is going to be for these bigger tournaments at a store?
Yeah, so this past weekend, on Saturday, I did go to my local league for just it was like a free tournament, whatever. Just try to win some play packs. I didn't do very good. I played Lost Box, but part of the reason I did go there is I wanted to see how the meta was looking in this post NEIC world. I played Lost Box. I played Andrew Hedrick's build with. I added a Shaman V to the deck. I expected a lot more Charizard.
Right.
Turns out there wasn't as much Charizard as I thought. There was a lot of stuff like Snorlax. There's actually a lot more control now in my local area, and there's also a lot more stuff like the Regidrago deck. There wasn't as much decks as I thought there would be. There was a lot more Gardevoir than I thought, so the meta was a little bit more spread out, and that did give me an idea now because I do have a couple of cups I'm going to be going to. I got one on the 1st of July I'm going to be going to. There's one in the middle of July I'm also going to that is apparently, from what I've heard, who is actually going. There's people going to this cup that are top players from who don't live in Toronto who are going to be there. So apparently it's going to be one of the sweatiest cups ever, just from who I heard is coming.
Hey,
So
drop
that's
the link. I'll get a flight. I'll come on up and join you.
Yo, just join. We get everybody there.
You live in a crazy area, so that Toronto area, if anybody didn't know, obviously one of the heavier or highly populated areas for Pokemon TCG. If you've never gotten a chance to go there, get a passport if you're living in the States and definitely try it out. I love going to Canada. Obviously, it's not necessarily my next door neighbor, but taking a 4-hour drive, see some scenery on your way out there, and then play with top level players. If you want to get experience, that's the way to do it.
Yep.
that's something else. Eric, you were talking about getting your experience and trying to find your footing with these decks.
Yeah.
Even though they might not be the same decks or the same 60s by any means, as the meta is changing. So going from cups to challenges, do you think that, if I'm playing deck A and I get okay with, or I have an okay result at a challenge, should I then play that at a cup? Because it's a little bit bigger, more is on the line, a little bit more at stake. If we're looking at the current structure, are those decks going to transition from challenges to cups?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of difference in challenges to cups. I mean, the one thing you have to think about when you are transitioning from a challenge to a cup is your deck needs to be good enough to be good in best of one, but strong enough in a best of three that like when you get to top cut, that you can take down that best of three. So that's kind of the biggest piece is just like finding that hybrid deck is that's best for cups. Maybe in your deck you played four nest balls for max consistency in a best of one. Maybe like in a best of in a cup, maybe you take one nest ball out and make it a vacuum.
Right.
To have that tech card that you need in the best of three to improve your Gardevoir matchup a little bit more. So like small examples like that are what you can do at cups. Yes, it will hurt you in Swiss rounds, but as long as you're in the top 8 at the end of the day, then you've got a chance to win the whole thing and get your X number of points, depending on what X is next year.
Exactly. And then kind of bridging off of that to LDF, if you're going to tomorrow take a deck to a cup, what are the top 3 picks you personally would take to a cup?
So right now, I'm like a big kind of fan of Lost Box. I don't know if I would play Lost Box again. I didn't do good on Saturday. It's kind of demotivated. And there was a lot of Lost Box at my locals on Saturday. So I don't know if I'd play the deck again, or if I did play Lost Box, I would probably tech Manaphy. I'd probably tech a Canceling Cologne in the deck also for the mirror match. So I would have Lost Box high up on there. Charizard's another deck I think is criminally underrated right now. I think Charizard just seems like it has the potential to be the best deck in the format because it has a good Guardy matchup. It can kind of tech for anything it wants. Like you can play the Temple of Sinnoh, so you can beat Lugia. You can play Jirachi if you really want to have a better Lost Box matchup. The Dragapult Charizard deck's also like pretty good too. So I think Charizard is really good. And then the third deck probably would just be something like the Regidrago or Raging Bolt deck, just a super fast, aggressive deck that hits hard. Because, we were talking about earlier with like the transition from cups to challenges. I personally prefer playing in League Cups and challenges. The problem with League Challenges is you have to go like 6-0 to win it.
Right.
Whereas like with a League Cup, you can win like 3-4 games and then you just like ID and get into top cut, or you can still bubble in sometimes. So League Challenges, in my opinion, is a worse experience than a League Cup. And if I was going to a League Challenge, I would just play like a very straightforward and strong deck, something like the Charizard deck, or if I'm at a League Cup, maybe I would play something a bit different, like that, Raging Bolt deck that just gets cheese fast wins, or maybe like something like the Lost Box deck. Just a deck that sometimes you can just win on the second turn of the game because you outsped your opponent. That's personally what I would do. So those right now would be like my top 3 picks. Still exploring a lot of different decks in the format right now. And I mean, I have a League Cup literally at the time of recording this, like what, 6 days? Like
6
it's on the
days,
Monday.
yeah.
Yeah, so the next League Cup is coming up very soon for me. So I'm definitely going to be prepping this weekend, even though ironically on Friday, my local tournament is hosting a E-Block tournament for
What?
fun.
Okay.
Yeah, so we got Battle VIP Pass in the
Mew
Twilight
VMAX
Masquerade
is
meta.
back. Let's go.
Yo, Gardevoir with Monkey Dory is going to be a little silly though. So
Yeah.
so that I'm not going to get the greatest cup testing on Friday, but I think Saturday I'm going to run it back and see if I can get a little bit better result, because I'm still figuring out what the play is for the tournament on the Monday. But I'm definitely excited to get back into the grind. I have honestly been just kind of bored, just chilling, not doing as much Pokemon as I want to do. The down season kind of feels bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you need an E-Block deck, just hit up Maddox. He'll give you a nice Mew
Yeah,
VMAX
I'm sure
list.
he will. Yeah.
Yeah. I know he's
So,
been cooking it in his brain
bringing me
like,
back,
man,
hey,
if I had this card, I would do so well.
Just need a deck that beats Gardevoir, because Monkey Dory, Reversal Energy, Shining Arcana Gardevoir is a little broken.
That's broken. Yeah,
Not
pretty
gonna lie, it's a
crazy.
little broken.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, we know that Josh Frink and Alex Szymanski were teching for Mew VMAX at NAIC with the Drapion in there. So, I mean, maybe it's a sign that maybe this is our new expanded format.
Maybe, yeah.
Which I'd love to see.
I mean, you could play Miraidon with Iron Hands and Flaffy, which is kind of broken.
I was thinking about that, yeah,
kinda
because you can play
crazy.
Prime Catcher and Peony Miraidon now, which is kind
Yeah.
of ridiculous.
Oof.
Yep.
And then Silene it back.
Yeah.
Eric, going to actual CP events, or what we think to be CP events, challenges and cups, what would your top 3 decks be?
Yeah, so I think my number one deck is just the Raging Bolt Okerpon. I
Mm.
played it to NAIC. It's very strong, very fast. I know the deck well. I think anyone can learn it pretty quickly, and it's strong into pretty much any meta. Like even with Gardevoir, you can beat Gardevoir. There's things you can do. I think deck number two, which is a little bit underrated currently, you saw Nick Moffat take it to a top 16 finish with chien-pao. I think
Mhm.
chien-pao right now is also one of those decks just can have that like explosive turn two Iron Hands, turn two Prime Catcher Greninja, like whatever you need to do, that deck can kind of do it sometimes.
Mhm.
And then like my last deck that I think is a sleeper pick, if you're looking for a sleeper pick to go into a room, a meta that people might not know, I think Dragapult Lost Zone Box is a really good underrated deck. Like if you're looking to play Lost Box, or if your area is playing a lot more Lost Box, they might
Mhm.
not be ready to play against Lost Box, Dragapult, because you still have Cramorant, you still have Sableye,
Right.
and you've got the damage spread. So like you can really put a lot of pressure on with that deck. It's a little inconsistent, is one of the
Mm.
concerns for it, but at the end of the day, you're still playing a Lost Box deck. So
That's right.
That's true.
Gotta select those
I do
flowers.
like it. Yeah, I do like it. If I was gonna play in a cup tomorrow, LDF, I'd probably be sleeving up Lost Zone Dragapult.
I rate it. I'm not
So
sold on that deck yet. I think Sablezard is better, but it's a deck that I haven't put as much time in with, and maybe it's
Yeah,
something that I'll consider bringing for the Monday Cup. We'll have to see.
yeah.
yeah. You
I'm
got
I
down
mean,
to
and
try
you don't have to
Charizard?
play Radzard. You can just play Greninja and just to
Yeah.
draw cards, like not
That's
for
fair
the
too.
attacking purposes.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
like
that's how I've been playing it.
yeah, because there's gonna be a lot of Lost Box. I think at this Cup on Monday, because there's a lot of Lost Box last weekend, and if
Yeah,
there's gonna be a lot more on the Saturday testing before the tournament, then yeah, maybe I'll consider the Dragapult deck, because I've
yeah. I mean,
never been a believer in the Lost Zone Pult deck, but if I give it a chance, maybe I'll actually end up liking
it
it, since I
definitely
am
farms
on.
Lost Box if you're looking to
I was
farm Lost
yeah.
Box.
It
Yeah,
seems like it's just broken into that matchup, and honestly,
yeah,
maybe I think it probably beats stuff like Charizard. So yeah, maybe I'll think about that one, because
Yeah.
I'm in my Lost Box arc right now, so I'm
yes,
definitely looking into maybe just keeping on the Lost Box train.
Solid.
yeah,
And then you can TM Devo everything off the board and
yep.
then call it a
That's
day.
not a bad idea. Played for the mirror, because there's actually a
Yeah.
lot of Dragapult Charizard at my locals too.
Oh wow.
It's another deck that I've been seeing a
Because it's
lot of,
Horde,
like
right?
in
Because it's
general.
Horde.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a
It
lot of it on the
happens.
ladder and at locals, so that's probably another deck that you need to make sure you can beat going into like a cup or
Correct.
challenge.
Yeah.
Manipulating the meta from afar.
Mhm.
So we're gonna hop over to our next segment here. I don't know if you're watching this and you haven't heard, but there's obviously speculation on Twitter or X, and then obviously within all the groups amongst every content creator. I'm sure that we've seen lots of things happen, but basically what is being talked about is the restructuring of the championship format going into the 24-25 season for Pokemon TCG, and actually all of the Pokemon sports. It might be a restructure from what it seems. The first thing that we want to talk about is there may or may not be regionals leaking, and it seems like there's a couple that are confirmed. And we kind of had the episode a few days ago on the channel about the tiered, which Eric was part of here, the
I
tiered
gotta watch that.
It was good.
locations as what is best. But we're seeing maybe we're going to get less regional events, and that could mean other things for us. So LDF, what are your thoughts on the speculation there?
So, I mean, in terms of less regionals, honestly, I mean, if it's true, because from what I've heard, also, there's going to be a couple less regionals than we're used to. Some of the more like popular locations, like Charlotte and Knoxville, won't be returning.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I mean, I would like more tournaments. I think the whole idea is that Pokemon tournaments have gotten so large now that I think Pokemon, they want to kind of not tone down a little bit, but they kind of want to make them more of like an event, even though they already are an event. Just make them more of an event. That's one of the running kind of theories I've been hearing right now about why there's less regionals. The locations, what I've heard though, have been pretty good. I know Toronto's returning. That's the big one for me, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver, though, I think Vancouver is gonna be the same time around the rotation set, so I don't know
Okay.
if I'll be going to that one. But from what I've heard, the locations are good. And yeah, no, I'm looking forward to returning to Pokemon, but it does suck if there is going to be less regionals, because I mean, part of the fun of playing the game is like doing all the traveling, going all these different
Right.
tournaments. And having, a couple of regionals like a month sometimes isn't a terrible thing. But thankfully, though, they are still bringing back like popular locations that I think are pretty solid.
Yeah, exactly. And I would love to see like other style events maybe come into the format,
Hmm.
maybe come into the championship circuit, whether it's regionals or not regionals, maybe something more on a local level,
Bring back
some
states.
states or something like that. Not necessarily, we would have to see how the championship points are going to be spread amongst these events. But you're right, LDF, you talk about going to these regional events, and it's honestly, you make friends. I know it's kind of funny and it's a meme, but you make friends along the way. And
You do.
these are sometimes the only places you get to see your friends in person, unless you're traveling, 4 or 5 hours to a League Cup. And who really wants to do something like that? But
Exactly.
so, Eric, I'd love to get your take on what you think for lessened regionals and
Yeah.
potentially, what that looks like.
I mean, less events is just worse for the community as a whole, right? I mean,
Mhm.
people want to play Pokemon, and Pokemon has not shown us the ability to give us an uncapped event
Right.
or unlimited registration or registration not be a problem. So having more opportunities for people to play Pokemon is what I'm an advocate for, because
Mhm.
that's how the community grows. That's how it will continue to grow. If you scale back the amount of events you do and decrease the amount of people playing, then that's just like bad for your community as a whole. And
Yeah.
and for me personally, when I go to an event, especially when it's a place that I haven't been, I'll try to spend an extra day or two, and just go visit that city, because I would never
Yeah.
go to Peoria. I would never, I would have never gone to Toronto if it wasn't for the event there. Like as an American in Florida, I just kind of stay in my region, but this kind of forces me out of that. So when there's more, you get those different locations, like a Salt Lake City coming back, or Fresno coming back. I would like to go to something like that. So I don't know. I think just limiting the pool is it's just very harmful to the community, and
Yeah.
and it has a chance to. I don't care what you do about best finish limits and worlds invites and stuff. I just want to play more Pokemon and be around people that enjoy Pokemon. Because I got my local group here, but sometimes, I met you, PJ, this year. I met you, Matthew,
Yeah.
this year, and I just love the relationships that we have built.
Right.
And I just want to see you guys more and have fun.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
And I can see that. Now, another topic I want to bring up that's speculation too, you talked about a little bit, Eric, is the best finish limits. I know that that's a big one on everybody's mind, is that we at one point went to a best eight or best finish limit. What that means is they take all 8 of your top finishes, and that is what is calculated. Anything below those top 8 finishes doesn't count towards championship points, so on and so forth. Now that's for league challenges, league cups, and regionals now. And then they changed that this past season to 6 as a BFL. Now, when we look at the newer season and the speculation, they're looking at reducing that to 4. Now, what do you think about reducing from 8 to 6 to 4 now in this upcoming season, Matt? Going off of obviously your personal best finish limits and looking at somebody trying to compete for the world championships, what do you think that does to a day-to-day player that isn't necessarily striving for worlds?
Yeah, I mean, this is like definitely a lot worse for the casual, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, um, I mean, yeah, like I'm someone who didn't go for my invite this year, but I
Mm-hmm.
did get a decent amount of championship points overall, and yeah, it would hurt the casual player. But a lot of like the argument that I've heard around like the best finish limit thing, and especially the other part of the rumor
Mm-hmm.
that is apparently getting changed with how you're going to get your invite.
Yeah.
Um, it's more or less like if you just want all these tournaments to have fun, then that's going to be like the main reason to go half the time now, because of how much harder it is going to be to go to Worlds. So it may not even matter with the best finish limit in that regards, but it does suck that it is getting lowered a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, but again, we'll have to see how it like impacts the overall like consistency of how people are going to get their invite this year.
Right, exactly. Now, would you say, Eric, this is a positive or negative change if followed through on, that we're just going to have BFL 4s for everything going forward? I heard that maybe there's even a BFL for ICs, which I think
Right.
That's
personally I don't
crazy.
like.
No, I don't like
I
that
mean,
either.
I honestly think you might have to if
Mm.
you're reducing it, because
Yeah.
otherwise you can still pay to play, and I think they're trying to get away from a pay to play concept.
Yeah.
And what that means for those of you that don't know what pay to play means, like, oh, if I've got unlimited money, I can go to Cape Town, Africa, and play in a special event, and and that's just going to keep happening, right? If
Right.
I think even reducing your best finish limit, like, let's just say I'm a casual player and I can go to a couple places, like, yeah, I can go to Charlotte or Toronto, but why would I not go to Mexico and play in a special event there, and have a really good chance of getting top 16 points, because the amount of players that will play there. It just depends on what they do with the structure. If they say, hey, if you've got X number of entries, it scales back. There's so many cool ideas out there. I saw Jake Gearhart, floating one around today, um, about rewarding points based off of your match points and different things. So, I mean, there's a lot of changes I would like to see. I don't love the bubbles that we're experiencing this season. They're very bad, as far as money bubbles, point bubbles.
Right.
There's so many things that have impacted a lot of people. But for me, overall, I think reducing the best finish limit, if you're reducing the number of regionals that we can go to, is not a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if all the rumors are true, then sure, it's fine. But if we still have like 15 regionals and my best finish limit's 4, like, why am I gonna go? Like, at some point, why would I go? And I think Pokemon wants you to go. So if Pokemon wants you to go, you want our best finish limit to be higher, because you want us to go to more events, and so you can make more money.
Yeah.
It's all a business at the end of the day. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, and honestly, I know that, we kind of briefly mentioned or speculated on the speculation of the way to get into Worlds. So, Eric, what we've heard is that top 100 potentially, out of all the championship points, if you look at the leaderboard, if you're in the top 100 for your region, and it obviously might differ for other regions. I'm just specifically talking about North America, Canada, and US. If you're in the top 100, that's how you're going to qualify for Worlds, instead of just having a championship points race. And then, if you made X number of points, then you get to go. But that kind of is the pay to play mindset too, is if I got X number of points, I just get to go in. Whereas if I'm in the top 100 with my best finish limits being reduced, so on and so forth, then I still am good, because chances that you're winning 4 regionals is pretty low, and then the chances that you're even top 32ing 4 regionals, it gets lesser and lesser as time goes on. And if we look at other games, obviously Pokemon wants to become an esport. They've made that pretty clear, and they are kind of branching into that realm now with this season. So what do you think about having a top 100 player go into the world?
I don't mind it, right? Like, I think no matter what they do, they're going to give us criteria that they believe that pushes you as a player to become the very best that you can. And ever since, the original episode of Pokemon ever came out, it's, I want to be the very best, right? And I don't care what the structure is. I'm going to push for it no matter what. If I look at kind of what happened this season, I got 90th in America or somewhere around there for 700 points, and I didn't even hit my best finish limits.
Right.
So I think it's fine, to have a top X. The only issue I see with something along those lines is if I'm on the border and let's just say my grandmother dies and I cannot go to the North American International Championships. Now my World Championships is, I'm in jeopardy, right? Because someone can just come in and pass me there.
Right.
I don't love that concept. I do think that, like, having a single target to shoot for allows you to do enough early in the season to set you up for that success. Because even for me, like I said, I didn't hit my best finish limit, because once I hit my goal, then I'm not going to go travel out to LA or Vancouver and spend, hundreds and hundreds of dollars when I don't need to. So I don't know. I don't love that. And again, it all comes back to the uncapped registration, right? If I'm in the hunt for Worlds and you lock me out of North American International Championship and somebody passes me because I didn't get in, that is not fair to anyone by any means. And so until that can be solved, I don't think they can go to kind of a balancing structure like they're trying to do, or rumored to try to be doing.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
I agree with that too. I think that, if we're looking at, we were talking about points bubbling, bubbling points, bubbling cash. So if you have the same record as somebody else, but they're getting cash and you didn't because of your opponent's resistance, so on and so forth. It's kind of like the same thing when you're looking at just top 100. It's not an achievement. I, I talk about this a lot, and I've talked about it in, group chats that I'm in, where if we're going to treat ourselves as the elite that can go to worlds, right? And that's what a lot of players want to have, and they deserve that because they are the elite players that have consistent high placing finishes all the time, and has been true through season and season. You deserve that. But I think if TPCI continues on this road where it's an achievement and not a status, if you have your achievement of 500 CP, you've achieved it. Regardless of how you got there, you've achieved the goal. Whereas if it's the world championships, I do see the point where it's the championships of the world all together in one space. It's one thing if, we talk about prize support and we talk about, other things that can help the game grow and players want to go to more events. That's something, but I think that the world's championship is viewed a different way. So, Matt, would you agree or disagree that, if you're watching the World Championships, you want to see the best of the best play, or do you think that as long as a player has an achievement that they've hit that TPCI has set, they should be playing in this event?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a bit of a kind of debate there because the World Championships is supposed to be, the best of the best. And to be fair,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, when you get to later on in the tournament, when you're in the day 2, when you're in the top 8, most of the time the names in the top 8 and in day 2 are all going to be like the high level players. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the time you're not going to see as many newer players who got their first ever Worlds invite be at Worlds and then they're going to make top 8 out of nowhere. It can happen. I'm not saying it can't happen, but more often than not, we're seeing the best of the best are the ones who have those deep runs in the World Championships, regardless of how many actual like players got their invite. So like a good
Mm-hmm.
example of this would be like last year's World Championship 2023. The top 4 was like Michael Pramawat, Vance Kelly, Tord Reklev, and Azul. That's like 3 of the greatest players of all time in top 4 alone. Like you can definitely see that the best players are always going to do good at Worlds regardless. And like if you go to the World Championships 2023, 22, 2019 and look through like the top 32 on Limitless, you'll see that most of the names are just going to be the usual names you'll see do well at regionals and ICs and stuff. So in fairness, I think there is a debate where it's like you should be able to get your invite if you achieve your goal, because at the end of the day, unless you crack the perfect 60 for the tournament, a lot of the time you're not going to be able to have as deep of a run as like a pro player would. And I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
everyone who goes to Worlds is bad at the game or anything. I'm just saying that's been the trend that usually we end up seeing. Most people who get their first Worlds invite probably won't have a better chance of making day 2 than something like, because then you're just playing against all the best players in the world. And yeah, I guess it's really hard. It's harder than a regional where there's a good chance you'll play against people who are more casual than, at Worlds where like you're playing against the top level players. Like you could go literally round 1, hit Tord, and then the next round hit like Shintaro Ito, and then like the
Yep.
next round hit Hemi Brand. You know what I mean? Like you're going to hit the best of the best throughout the tournament, no matter what. So it definitely can be hard. Like honestly, you can compare Worlds is even harder than day 2 of a regional or IC,
Right.
and those
Definitely.
are usually fairly hard too.
Yeah.
So I kind of see the different kind of takes on this, where it's like people want to just see the best play, but at the same time, usually that's what happens at the World Championships. Anyways, are the best of the best are usually the ones who make the deep runs. Anyways,
Yeah.
we
Yep.
still see newer players have good runs at Worlds. It always happens, but I'm just saying more often than not, you're going to see the high level players have those deeper runs in the tournament. And I think that honestly anyone should be able to get their invite based on the structure of the points. And actually, I did want to briefly mention the thing you were talking about earlier, Eric, with the top 100 in the region. So
Yeah.
interestingly enough, in Canada's a smaller region compared to the US. I would imagine in the
Right.
US, it's going to be really difficult to get your invite if they combine Canada and the US together.
Yep.
That's going to make it even harder. Like I'm actually, as we were talking earlier, I was looking up on the Canada leaderboards right now. I am 76th in Canada. So if theoretically speaking, the top 100 players in Canada would get their invite, I would have had my invite, and I only had 398 CP. You know what I mean? And that was off of what
Right.
3 day twos, 1 top 32, whatever. So like
Right.
that's very interesting to me. But the interesting about that too is where if it is region based, it's going to be a lot harder in the US to get your invite than actually in Canada, because Canada's a lot smaller. Yeah, it's very competitive in Toronto, but Canada doesn't have as many players who play, you know, more on the east and the west coast. It's more just most of the players come from the eastern side of Canada. The west coast is less like, it's not as like busy with players. So I would imagine it's easier to get your invite in Canada, whereas if in the US, I would imagine it's going to be really
662 was
difficult.
the 100 cutoff for America.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I would imagine it's gonna be really difficult to get your invite in the US. If they do divide it by Canada and the US, I would
Right.
imagine Canada, you know, it's probably not gonna be too bad. The US, yeah, I would imagine there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna miss their invite.
Yep.
And even I actually wanted to mention that too when you were talking about what if you don't get into a tournament
Right.
and all of a sudden that ruins your chance of making it to Worlds.
Mhm.
That would be pretty bad. Like, I mean, we saw a disastrous NEIC registration process this
Right.
year, which hopefully they end up sorting out next year. If this does happen again, like if Pokemon keep the things the same, you sign up on Arcanine or you sign up through their broken website they created a day before the tournament registration came up. If that's how you get into tournaments and people actually start missing big tournaments that they need to play in order to get their invite or stay in the 100 players, that's gonna be really, really grief. Where at the
People
very
will
least,
stop playing. Like
Yeah.
it will deter people from playing.
yeah, it's gonna actively hurt the game a lot. Like
Yeah.
the outcry is already bad enough right now because a lot of people actually needed to go to NEIC even to get their invite this time around.
Yep.
But if it's going to be even harder and it's going to be more important to go to these tournaments to keep up that top 100 status, it's going to be even worse when you miss when you miss your registration. Yeah, and it could definitely cause people to like want to quit playing the game, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely think that if this does end up being the case and like you not getting into NEIC or EUIC causes you to miss your invite, I mean that's just it's not a good look for the game in my
Do you
opinion.
think there should be some type of pre-registration for people that are going for invites, or I don't even know how you would do that.
It's hard
right?
to do that, right?
Yeah, like
how
especially
would you
early in
know?
the season. Like how do you do that early?
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
maybe you only do it for ICs, right? Like maybe at ICs, if you are top 100 currently or top 200, you get a spot guaranteed. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
That seems kind of tough.
It's not a bad idea. That would be hard to do for sure because I mean anyone could theoretically just say I'm trying to get my invite this year, even if I'm like ranked 500 in the States. But at the same time, though, it would be tough to do. Like the best way to do that probably would just be to have like the top 50 players in the region guarantee a spot in.
Yeah.
But even then, it kind of gets a little messy. That one is tough, and even that kind of furthers my point of the whole like power imbalance if it is by region, where it's like if it's US 100 and Canada 100, like there's going to be a big imbalance between the two. Like honestly, if I'm going for my top 100 run in Canada this year, and you know this year I didn't go to LAIC or UIC, and I ended up still finishing in the top 100. If it's that easy to do without needing to go that many ICs, then okay, I'm not going to go to as many because it's easier in Canada. But if I'm in the States, it's a lot harder. You actually have to go to all the ICs to keep up. That's where things get grief. And then, if you miss registration, because ICs are notoriously very hard to get into, it definitely could cause a lot of issues. So I don't know how they're going to figure out whether or not you can actually get into an IC or not if you're going for the invite. Like, if you make the top 100 players guarantee a spot in, that's not a bad concept.
Yeah.
But there's backlash that can happen from that.
Right.
You're not going to make everyone happy ever.
No, it's never going to be perfect.
And just one more comment, PJ, before we move on.
Yeah.
One of the things you said, Matt, kind of stuck to me about how like people rise to the top at Worlds. And I think last year, the one reason why we saw that, and this is totally fine, it was a ridiculous concept, but the top 16 race was so valuable last year to get that like automatic day 2 qualifier. And I think that's why we saw the best of the best. And as crazy as that was for the people that were going for it, I don't see any problem with doing something like that. And I'm fine with it because you're the best of the best. Like you went to as many events as you need to do, and you got your best finish limit, and you know you finished in top 16. Like, congratulations! Like you deserve that day off. Like you did a lot more than other people did. So I'm totally good with that, bringing that back.
Yeah. Now here's
I agree with that.
Here's my hot take, right? And you can agree or disagree with me. Looking at it from a top 100 perspective, whether it's, North America as a whole, so on and so forth, if the players that are attending Worlds want to be viewed as the best of the best, obviously they're proving that throughout the season and every, season prior to this leading up, that if they want to be viewed as this top tier echelon of players, they might have to have a rule set change. And what I mean by that, I was talking about, if it's an achievement to get into Worlds, you're achieving that goal. But at the end of the day, we're not the MLB of Pokemon.
True.
We're not the NFL. We're Little League, right? It's not, we're playing a card game. So if you are going to be the best of the best, I think that there needs to be a rule set change to incorporate that, where, there's a heavier restriction on, ties and timing throughout a round. There's a heavier restriction on any sort of disqualifications throughout the season, because you have to play like a major league sports person in order to get that top echelon. So that's where I think that the achievement is a little bit better for the game. And, whether you're a casual player or a competitive player that wants to go for these Worlds invites, I do think that there should be a change also hand in hand with the structuring of how the rules of Pokemon TCG are in the competitive light.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because, I mean, even like you said, Eric, when you were saying how the top 16 was never really a bad thing, because at the end of the day, like, if you are, like, the top 16 was always literally the best players in the world who made the top 16. Like, you, obviously, like, if you're new to the game, you're not going to probably aim for top 16 because it's really difficult to do. You have to compete with, like, literally the best of the best. And then just even getting your invite in general, it should be like a reward. Like, I don't know, it's something you should be proud of, or like at all times. Like, you get your invite, you're proud of it, but you're not somebody who's aiming for that top 16 race, or, you could even go to Worlds with low expectations. Like, I'm not saying you should, but there's a chance where it's like, okay, I got all the way here to Worlds. I did it. I grinded the season. I got here, and whether I do good or not, I'm just happy that I was able to do it, because it's something to be proud of, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, not everyone got their invite.
No.
I'm pretty sure Andrew
It's like
Gantner.
250. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Gantner didn't. Yeah. Gantner
Yeah,
didn't.
he didn't get his invite. He got
No.
he had a pretty good season, all things considered. Top 8 at NEIC. I think he had like top 16 or top 8 or something at San Antonio. Like, he had a really good season. He didn't get his invite. He said he didn't go to as many locals to like get there, but you can kind of see, like, he's one of the top players and he didn't get his invite. Like, not everyone is getting their invite, but like I said, just anyone who gets it, even if you're new to the game, even if it's literally your first season playing the game, you manage to get your invite, you should still be able to go to Worlds and play. Like, in my opinion, that's how it should be. But the whole, like, the region thing is definitely very interesting. The thing that I'm just going to be very interested in with the whole top 100 in the region is if they're going to divide the US and Canada, because there is a big imbalance between the two,
It has
just
to be,
because
yeah.
Right.
like that's like, maybe they have to do top 200 in the States, in all honesty. Because
Yeah.
I don't think it's reasonable to top 100, because there's going to be a lot of people that miss their invite.
Mhm.
People are going to bubble out of their invite. People are maybe going to have that one bad tournament that's going to throw them off. Maybe they're not going to get into a
Right.
tournament. Whereas, like, easier places like Canada,
Mhm.
where, there's a lot less players, it's going to be a lot easier to get your invite. You don't have to
Yeah.
go to as many tournaments.
And then might have to break down other regions, like if we look at Oceania and
Yeah.
all the other region, Europe, are they going to break it down? If they're doing Canada and the US, they have to break down the European areas as well. Kind of going off of that. So that's something I'd be interested to see. Obviously, we should know, hopefully, fingers crossed, in a couple of days what this is actually going to lead to,
Right.
because
Yeah.
we need to know before July. Hopefully, Pokemon doesn't drag their feet into July when we've already started these events.
They did that last year.
They did do that last year,
True.
unfortunately.
We didn't know till the
they
end of
took forever
July
to
last
reveal-
year.
Yeah.
They took forever to reveal, like, the Hawaii date, so maybe who knows. But apparently the 28th is when everything's gonna come out, so we'll have to see on that one. But we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Eric. As a brief synopsis, what would be your perfect adjustments to the current structure that we're playing right now?
Yeah, all right. So number one thing that has to change is day 2 status has to change. Day 2 has to mean something. It's quite ridiculous that you can go to day 2, play a couple extra rounds and nothing happen. I think a really good solution to that is doing what Jake Gearhart suggested and awarding points based off of match points. So I'm totally okay with that. That actually entices you to stay a full 6 rounds on
Right.
day 2 instead of just dropping when you're out of it anyways, which a lot of people do. I think that Pokemon needs to invent some type of tiebreakers, and whether that be so, like a good example is in golf. If you're tied for second through fifth, then you split the money that was allocated for second through fifth between the 4 of you. And I think maybe we need to get to something like that, because these money bubbles are just so crazy, and we saw it like terrible at NAIC. We had people from inside like top 32 have the same points as missing top 64 missing packs,
Right.
And cash, and so that was like very bad to see. So those are 2 things I think that minimally have to change. They got to make changes in those point structures. And outside of that, and I'm okay with whatever else you do, honestly. Like, as long as you've decided that it's the best for Pokemon, then I agree with you. They have a lot more data than we have, and they have access to. So I hope and I trust that they have enough money to hire some good analyst people and analytics people to run the data and say, hey, we want top 10% of people to make worlds, and this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
So I still trust and believe in Pokemon companies. So I'll say I want those first 2 things to happen, and I don't care about the rest.
Gotcha. All right, LDF, same question back to you. What would your perfect changes to the current structure be?
I kind of like what Eric was talking about with the whole like day 2 stuff, because day 2 should matter a lot more, for sure. Because some people make day 2 and they'll get the same amount of CP as if they like sometimes even didn't even make day 2. It's kind of weird how that works. And then I wouldn't mind seeing something to do with like the time change within the TCG, like 50 minutes best of 3. A lot of the time is okay for some decks, but there's like stuff like Gardevoir, Lost Box, all these decks that are very methodically slow usually can't finish a best of 3 in time. A lot of Guardy players like tend, if they know they're in the mirror match, they tend to just do like a best of 1 or something. Like it's really hard not to tie nowadays, and that could just be because like the way the game is now, like they're just making slower decks. Like they should stop printing stuff like Gardevoir and just start printing more just easy to play decks like Raging Bolt or Charizard, I guess. But I don't know. Like if we end up going back into a slower paced format, the whole 50-minute best of 3 thing is going to be an issue. Like honestly, like if you look back to like the Diamond and Pearl era, pre Mewtwo EX, honestly, like that era, I don't know if it would have worked as well in this era, because every deck was like a bit slower back then. Like the format was slower paced, evolving, like stuff was just more like slower and methodical. Or nowadays, things are a little bit faster, but you still have those naturally slow decks, like something like a Gardevoir or a Lost Box. So it's something to do with the time, 100%. They need to do something about the time, 100%. Even if like they fixed it also within the top cut, because I know like the whole like World Championships last year was kind of crazy how it was decided on time. I don't even know why there's a time limit in the finals of the World Championships. The penultimate match in the entire season is timed, is kind of strange. And even like in regionals, like having a time limit is kind of strange to me. So something to just times. They got to fix the time somehow. I definitely think they have to do something about the time. I don't know if we can go into this next tournament with it.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of those points for sure. What we're going to do here is kind of close off here with a fun question, because I know that you've listened to us rant for enough time, for sure. So if we're going to a League Cup or League Challenge, what rogue deck would you bring if you knew nothing mattered and nothing was on the line? So we'll start off with you, LDF, because you were just talking here. So what rogue or meme deck would you bring?
It's kind of tough right now. Rogue and meme decks are struggling a little bit, in my opinion. But if there's any deck that's like meme worthy, I don't know. That's a tough one, to be honest. I do like the idea of like just random like Lost Zone pile decks. That's like one thing, because whenever I'm going through my binder, I'm like looking through like each card, I always like look at a card. I'm like, can this work with Lost Box? Like I don't know, like a Lost Zone pile.
You're
really
truly on your villain arc right now, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I do really like the Turbo Moon deck a bit, and I'm also kind of digging something like the Future Box decks. Those are kind of cool. Future Hands. There's a cool Future Thorns Valiant deck that won an online tournament.
I saw that.
Yeah, so that one was kind of cool. I did a video on it. It was actually like surprisingly pretty good. So I would like to see like Future and Ancient get a little bit more love right now. I also think Ancient Box is underrated, even if that deck is like kind of meta.
Right.
Not really a rogue deck.
Yeah, it showed up at NAIC, but
Yeah.
flipping the script over to you, Eric, what do you think you would bring if points didn't matter, nothing mattered, you just wanted to go have a great time? What meme or rogue deck would you bring to a challenge or a cup?
If I want to have a great time, I kind of think about great time as like flipping coins.
Okay.
And I'm probably gonna go find like a mill deck that flips coins. What's the water Pokemon
That's
that
the
does
Wug
that?
Trio?
Yeah, Wug Trio. I'm probably just gonna like go find the best way to play Wug Trio, even though Great Tusk is better. Or play Bramble Gas or something like that, or even Magnezone Control. Just something where I'm flipping a lot of coins would be a meme deck that I would take. That is a little bit competitive.
Solid. I'm surprised you didn't say Feraligatr, but I appreciate it.
True, you're right. I should have said Feraligatr.
Feraligatr, Monkey Dory, bro.
You're right. My bad. Sorry, Adam, if you're listening. I'm sorry. I should have said Feraligatr. You're the GOAT. You played it to NAIC and you day 2'd it with Feraligatr. So,
solid.
Or not NAIC, but whatever tournament was before that.
I think it was LA, right?
Yeah, LA. So whatever.
Actually sick.
Actually GOAT.
I guess like the only other deck I wanted to mention is like a meme. Not really a meme, but Arceus V-Star I think is kind of underrated. I've been cooking a couple arc piles recently, trying to figure out the best ways to beat the bad matchups like the Gardevoir and the Lugia, especially the Raging Bolt matchup. So, but I like Arc. I think Arc's underrated right now, even though it's not really a meme or rogue deck. You could kind of call it a rogue deck because it's fallen off so hard.
Sure.
So it'd be kind of surprising to see your opponent flip over an Arceus V, but I think Arc honestly could still be okay in this format. Like it seems okay into the stage 2 decks.
Gudra is another one.
Gudra
fell off.
Lost Gudra.
It's a thing.
You just got to bring the Applin to your locals.
Ooh, yeah, the festival deck.
Festival lead.
I'm surprised neither one of you said festival lead, but that's a deck that's been showing up at my locals, and I'm like, why?
That's crazy.
Why would you do that?
Festival lead Palkia.
Yep, there
Let
you
him
go.
Cook.
Oh, there you go, bro. It's crazy.
Very cool. We're all excited to play the new format, and we're interested to see with what this week has come. This episode should be out the day that the speculation actually comes to fruition. So comment down below what changes you see or what changes you might want to see for the upcoming season, and we'll be sure to answer those below. One more time, huge shout out to all of our sponsors again: Advanced GG, PTCGL Store. We've got Ultimate Guard here. And we also have kayfabe cards. So check out all the links down below in the description of this video. Before we head out, I'm going to give everybody here who joined me their chance to shout out and say their thanks. So Eric, we'll start off with you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thanks to PJ and the Shuffle Squad for hosting this and having me on. It's having a good time this week with you guys. But secondly, I host the Beach Court podcast. We release every Thursday, every other week on Thursday currently. We are approaching our 1 year anniversary very rapidly. I think in 2 episodes is our 1 year anniversary, and I've got some ideas I'm cooking up. So stay tuned. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, anywhere you find podcasts.
Awesome. And then LDF, back over to you.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter at LittleDarkFury. You can also check out my second channel, LDF Pokemon TCG. Like I said earlier in the video, kind of going in a bit of a content drought right now, especially on the second channel specifically. I'm kind of struggling to come up with content. So I did a really cool video where I ranked like the greatest cards of all time based on how healthy they were for the game. So I'm definitely down to try more like experimental content like that. So if you want to get more competitive stuff from me, definitely check out the second channel. And yeah, once again, big shout out to the Shuffle Squad, of course. And yeah, thanks for having me on another one of these discussion videos. Love doing them.
No problem. And you got to do some, we got to get you on some GLC content eventually.
100%. I'd be down.
GLC at my locals on Thursday night, so that's going to be a fun, interesting thing.
Yes.
But make sure that you're out there playing Pokemon TCG. Share this video with your friends if they want to learn a little bit more about getting into the competitive game, and subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about competitive Pokemon TCG. As always, PJ here signing off. We will catch you next time on the Shuffle Squad.
Peace.
Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.